do in the winter.
Hello and welcome to the 6th of these podcasts from the Isles of Mull, Iona, Ulva and Gomatra. I'm Alasdair Satchell. I live outside of Dervig in the north of Mull, and I'll be your host today. In this episode, I'm delighted to say that I get the chance to talk with Alasdair MacLean. Alasdair was born in Dervig and spent his childhood around and about the village. He can trace his family and the area back to the 1700s. Alasdair is well known for his work as a fisherman and his vast knowledge of local lore and tales. He's a true tradition bearer. Our conversation covers a lot of ground, and we move from topic to topic fairly swiftly. Some of the things we talk about include Queenish, Treshnish and the Whisky Cave, salmon netting, otter trapping, the process of making your own shot, the changes in dance and ceilidh music, the Highland Fund, fishing boats and fishing for different catches. Towards the end of our conversation, we get into tales of characters from the past, including Marky Dan, the Bongan, and several other folks. There are links and more on the website for many of the topics we talk about, including some photos. I had a few issues with the microphone whilst recording this session, so please excuse any odd wee noises and sort of the sound of hands moving around here and there. At one point in the chat, Alasdair's wife, Anne, comes in with a cuppa for us both, which I've left in. You can't beat Highland hospitality. That scone was just cracking. At one point, we got into looking at some photos. I'll drop back in with a wee voiceover to give you a bit more context there. I've kept it in the episode as it's just great to hear Alasdair talk about the men he worked with and the boats that he knew. The photos he talks about can be found on the episode's webpage on www.whatwedointhewinter.com. I'm delighted to say that this episode has been sponsored by www.mullselfcatering.co.uk. Have a look at their site at www.mullselfcatering.co.uk for their 3 properties, 2 flats at Thornley Bank and the house beside them, Creve. They're beautiful properties in Upper Tobermory and have a really homely feel to them. They're perfect for a break with family or friends. I'll be back at the end of the podcast to say a couple more things and round off. In the meantime, over to Alasdair.
I'm Alasdair MacLean. I was born in Dervig in Craigan, that's up in the middle of the village there. And my people come from the Smiddy.
And how many of you are there in the family as well?
Well, there was 5 of us. I was the oldest. I was born in 1939 before the war. And then Tommy, he was born in 1942, I think it was. And then we had a sister, Mary Lily. She was born about 44, I think it was. But she died as an infant, you know. And then there was Elizabeth, you know, she's married to Hugh McPhail. Mm-hmm. And Catherine Duffy, you know, in Dervig. That's the 5 of, that was the 5 of us. Aye.
So you grew up in the village, but the family from the Smiddy originally?
Well, my grandfather, as I was telling you earlier, they came from the mill.
Yes.
Now, he was born in 1826. Hugh MacLean, he was a twin. There was his twin brother Neil, and I think there was probably a dozen of them there in that family, in the mill.
Wow.
Now, he was apprenticed, I think it was Donald McMaster. He lived in Drumgiga. Mm-hmm. He was a famous kind of blacksmith, you know, he was from Kiel in Morven there. And my great-grandfather must have served his time with him because my great-grand-uncle, John, was married to one of Donald's daughters. So that was how that came about. But then he came to the Smiddy in Dervig about 1850. He was there in 1851. Just got married then. And he had, I think it was it 12, I think they had as well. And how they were living in that single-storey house at the Smiddy, I don't know. But he was a blacksmith there, and then my grandfather, he was his, Alexander Frandy, he took over the Smiddy, and he was there, and then my father, he took it over, and I think the Smiddy, well, by the time I left the school, it was, you know, even before that, in the early 1950s, it was just, there was nothing as far as work was concerned. So I missed out on that, if not, I would probably have been doing that kind of work. But that's where they came from, and that's where they are. But they go back in the mill to the very early 1700s.
That's amazing.
But with that Smithy house, my great-grandfather came in there in about 1850. Well, we've still got that house.
Yes, still in the family, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a long time.
It's, a very long time.
Isn't it?
Gosh.
Yeah.
So, your dad was working in the smithy, but times had changed and kind of people weren't buying or weren't repairing materials so much.
What happened was, see, in my grandfather's time and my great-grandfather's time, it was all horses.
Yes.
But then, once it came up to wartime, there were still a lot of horses then, but as the war went on, the Department of Agriculture started sending round tractors, the old tractors they were, and they had thrashing machines and different ploughs and things like that. They were doing a lot of work to help the farmers. And what happened was, just as the war was coming to an end, the horses were getting less and less. Then the wee Fergie tractor came on the scene. Yeah. And before you knew it, everybody had a wee Fergie tractor, and the horses were virtually disappearing,
What my folks in Colonsay said about it, they mourned the loss of the horses because you could get on a horse drunk and it would take you home, whereas a tractor certainly wouldn't. I've
certainly seen quite a few of that kind of thing. There was Duncan McGilvery that was in Lettermore.
Oh, yeah.
He used to come down there to get the horses shod, and I see them towing maybe between 3 and 5 at a time. He had a trap, and the old horse would walk on down. And Duncan was a very kind man, Duncan, and he always had wee bundles of a turnip and some potatoes for all his mates in Dervig,
Nice.
And he'd go away. We'd go up with him, cart all this stuff up, and he would go around all the houses, and of course he was getting a dram and a cup of tea, and as he generally did in these days. And then he would arrive back at the smithy. If it was the winter time, it was getting dark by the time he would arrive back. So he would get another cup of tea from my mother, and we would light the candles in the lanterns that were on the side of the trap, and tie all the horses on. He would climb up into the trap, and had these big horse blanket things he used to put round him.
Aye.
And he would set off. It'd be freezing. My father used to say, by the time Duncan gets to on time, he'll be sleeping, and the horse will take him home. And the horse would take him right across, and he would stop at the gate. That was him.
Fantastic.
That's the way they were. Different things altogether.
Oh, very much so, yeah.
But as far as the horseshoeing was concerned, it was a shame, really, because it wasn't just horseshoeing. Everything was done in that smithy. My grandfather, he served a bit of his time with my great-grandfather, but then he went to Glasgow. Okay. And he spent quite a few years there. He learned it wasn't just horseshoeing, they did everything, So he was very popular. But he taught a lot of that to my father as well,
Fantastic.
But they could do all these kind of things. In fact, there was, down in Queenish there was a turbine there for driving the mill and different things. And it had a huge big crown wheel, I don't know, it would be 2 feet or 2.5 feet across, and the teeth got broken on it. It was cast, cast. So in these days there was no welding going on or anything like that. So my grandfather took it up to the smithy, and he cut, the teeth were quite long apparently, but that, and he cut a dovetail out with it into the thing. There was about 3 or 4 teeth that had stripped out of it. And he made, this was all done with a file and a chisel. But he made the teeth out of iron, and he heated the thing in the fire, the crown wheel, till it would swell, Then he inserted these new teeth and cooled it, and they just clamped it. Now that thing was there up till, I think it was Balfour Paul's time. I think Huey destroyed quite a lot of machinery was in there. It was a shame.
It's got so much potential, that whole square is extraordinary.
You should have seen it when it was in its heyday, my goodness.
I would have loved to have seen it. It's a beautiful space.
Oh, Hughie, my uncle, worked there all his life, really,
Right.
you know, and it was quite amazing to see that place. They had a harness room there. It was you went in at the front. I think there was a flat above it where the coachman used to stay. But they had every kind of harness you could imagine in there, you know, all the working harnesses, the ones for the shows and the ones for the ploughing matches, and it was all polished. Remember my Uncle Hughie, you know, before a ploughing match, he'd be down there for days, polishing all this harness and the buckles and the brass stuff, and it was terrific.
So how much did Antime and Queenish as farms feature in your life growing up as a child?
Oh, a lot, yes, of course, because they like the Antime and Trochlach and Arnu and these places, Queenish. When we were young, you would be going, there'd be fanks, you know, for clipping the sheep and all the rest of it. Now, we would be there when we were boys, crocking, as they called it, for pulling out the sheep for the guys that was clipping.
Ah, right, okay.
And coping them onto the thing. And if you didn't, if there was somebody they weren't very keen on, you would give him a sheep that had been rubbing herself in a bank somewhere, and she had stones in her and they'd be trying to clip, you know.
Yeah, that'd be so...
It was hand clipping in these days, you know. But we used to go to the funk up the glen there, you know, up before you get into the forest, Dorshach na Craig there. We used to go to that one a lot.
Is that where Fairmuller was? Is that where the old fair was many years ago?
Oh, no. No, that's this, on the Antime end of that.
Okay.
After you pass Drum the Cross,
Yes, yeah.
you go along, before you come into the forest, see below the road there.
Just on the right-hand side, yeah.
They're stone buildings. That was the Fank.
So where was the Mull Fair then? Where did that...
It was up at Drumtai. That's when you go through you past Achnakraig, you go through the forest, and when you come out of the forest and you start climbing up the hill, it was up near the top of that hill in the forest as day.
Right, I'd never been there then.
No, it's not very good to see nowadays, but when I remember it, there was no forest there.
Yeah.
And there was you could still see the sort of remains of, they had, I don't know, it must have been built with turf or something, whether they were using it for sitting on or what, I don't know, but it was a very important place, that.
Yeah.
Of course, it was amazing. You know, a lot of folk, if they were travelling over there, would come up through Glen Macquarie. That takes you from Lagan.
Oh, right, okay.
You know, instead of going all the way around by Dervig.
There was the hill and through.
Just through Glen Macquarie there. That was Boswell and Johnston, when they went over to Ulva, that was apparently the way they went through that glen, you know.
Of course. Oh, I've never done that walk yet.
It's nice. It's a beautiful place up, and if you go up on the Conagara side there to the top of that, that's what the heck they call it? It's the castle anyway. I can't remember what the Gaelic name of it was. But see if you get up on the top there, you can see for miles in all directions.
We talked very briefly about old man Mackenzie, Lucy's dad, as well, and Johnny Nan. What was their relationship like?
Oh, great. Johnny was shepherd in time at that time, you know, and Johnny was always a bit of a famous poacher, you know, as we all were in these days. And I think I told you about that at the time with the salmon.
Yes.
And Johnny had been down at the river and he got a couple of salmon. And these days, when you were shepherding, it would be a hessian sack turned over, just half a rope round your back, you know, holding it. And all you carried your stuff in there.
Yeah.
But Johnny got a couple of salmon down in the river, and he just arrived back at the farm, and Mackenzie turned up, and he says to Johnny, "What have you got in that bag, MacDonald?" "2 of your salmon, sir," he said. And he started laughing, old brother Mackenzie.
The audacity. Yes. Oh, man.
He was some boy. But he was very nice, the Colonel. I liked him because I used to go stalking with him, you know, and up from Achnadrish and sometimes at Achnacraig and these places. And I used to go shooting with him out at Snipe in the winter time sometimes too. He was some boy.
your family were quite on the land. Did they have a presence in the sea? Did they work on the sea as well? Were they?
Well, not the MacLeans, the MacDougals did.
Right.
My great-grandfather, Alexander MacDougall, they weren't from Hown.
Ah, right, okay.
And they came from Ireland about, like tea.
Oh, that'd be lovely, thank you, yes, that'd be great, thank you very much.
All right, I was going to leave you to do it, I'll do it. Tea or coffee?
A wee coffee would be lovely, thank you very much.
Milk?
Just black, thank you. That's very kind.
Black?
Just black, thank you. So the family come from, the MacDougals come from Ireland?
They came, well, I'll give you the bit that Alec Bake, he gave a lot of information to, when they started with tape recorders first. And I'll give you the thing there, it's very interesting to read it. Yeah. It's about how they were making the whiskey.
Ah. Where did they do that?
Oh, and the Whiskey Cave was one of their places.
Okay, over at Hown, of course.
Aye, but they came to Laganulva first of all, the Brace of Lagan they called it.
I think I've heard his one. He's speaking in Gaelic as well.
It would have been, yeah.
Yes, it's lovely. I've heard that one. Yeah.
No, there was three brothers came first of all, so Alec Bake said, and they lived there. And I don't know what happened to two of them, where they went or what happened, but there was definitely connections with other MacDougals over there, and I've never found out. It's difficult to find these things as far as the
generations go.
Aye, but anyway, the ones on my side, I think he was a John MacDougall, and he married a Mary MacLean over there, and through there, they were there for a few years, must have been. Then they moved. They were in Glachgookery.
Oh yes, yeah.
And
thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Oh no, that's just great. Thank you.
They were in Glachgookery for a number of years. Not Craggy, but Glachgookery.
No, the lower one.
The higher one, the one.
Oh right, the higher.
Craggy's the one nearest the shore. The one with the gable end on the house.
Right. I've always got the two. Oh yeah, thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Right. Oh, if you want to join us here, more than welcome. Thank you.
Oh, she's got that. And then they moved to Hown, and they were there for a long time. But they were making whiskey. See, the Whiskey Cave is just straight down below there. But they were making a lot of whiskey up in Lagan as well, up around that area. But the customs were always chasing them.
Of course, yeah.
So it was a bit of a problem. But my father was saying when he was a boy, he was over in Hown, with the old man. But he was getting quite old at that time. And they used to walk up to that Whiskey Cave, and he was saying there was still barrels at the back of that, the casks.
Really?
And at the back of that cave, aye. See, the way it was made, there's a wee stream comes down there, but the stream, if you ever go down there and look at it, you'll see across the top of the cave, it's built with stone. Now that was built so that the water came down, and it was level, and it flowed over level, and blocked the smoke getting out of the cave.
That's very cunning.
Because the customs guys, when they went round the sea, would see it, But they were doing it. He was doing it. Well, there was one of them there. He was a real. The last one was Alan MacDougall. He was a real guy for the drink, for producing the whiskey. There's a place between Treshnish and Hown, just above the road. There's a wee burn comes down there. Just above the road, there's a row, and I think you can still see it. I haven't been over there for a long time, but that was Bruce Allen, they called that place.
Right.
Aye, and he used to brew in there, and he had a place at Treshnish Point. If you're ever down there, back from the cliff a wee bit before you go up the hill there, Sleeov they call that area there. But anyway, he was brewing in there too. There was a thing built like this in the Whiskey Cave.
The worm and
the
stone.
The stone thing.
So the family Your grandfather was at sea, is that right? The McDougall?
My great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather.
Aye.
So what was it that led you first to go to sea yourself?
Oh, I always had... we spent that much time in the water when we were young in the Smithy. You know, the burn was the place you lived in all summer long after salmon and sea trout and anything else you could get, or down the loch with a spear after the flounders, you know. But
of course, yeah, the fatties.
that, and then my granduncle, Alasdair MacLean, he lived in the shore cottage, you know, at Queenish there, and we were always out with him, you know, at the lobsters and that sort of thing. And my Uncle Charlie, my father's Uncle Charlie, granduncle, on the MacLean side, he was a great man for going out in the boat and would be in the loch fishing cuddies and stuff down at the Narrows there, just on the inside of the Narrows. Or sometimes you would venture out as far as Gidwar on a good day and a Saturday, but it's all rowing and things, you know. So that got me I was always interested in fishing, you know. It was a bit of a challenge, you know, and I think...
Totally, yeah.
I think that was what got me started in it. But when I left the school in 1954, you couldn't get a job fishing for love nor money because there wasn't any fishing going on.
Really? Gosh.
See, my granduncle by that time, he was past it, you know, he had stopped fishing full time. But my Uncle Peter, he had got the fishing down at Queenish there at the Moorachnach. That's just off a Luring, between Luring and Lochmingary.
This is Head, I've heard a lot.
Head, yes, that's the very man. And well, first of all, there was no fishing going on, so I thought, well, there was no alternative but the farming sort of thing. So I went to Turchlach and I was only there for a couple of years. And then I got a job with Peter then. He got the fishing in Glengoram as well.
Right.
So I was fishing with Peter for 2 or 3 years, I think it was.
What were you catching?
Salmon. But when we started there, it was only a small 16-foot coal we had, and we were fishing. There was people, Yules, they were East Coast folk, and they were there in Mingary pre-war, you know, and they worked out of Lochmingary. There's a port on the Queenish side there. They'd built a nice jetty there, you know, just with stone, but a lot of it was down, so we had to rebuild it. But we fished 3 nets. We had one in the Moorachnach, one at Glengoram, east of the point, and then there was one further up, what we used to call a castle net. And the first year we were there, first year I was there, it was, you know, it was quite good. It was quite good, the fishing always down there. But we started the fishing started on the 16th of February, and it ran through to the 26th of August in these days, you know. But we used to start about the first week in March, and it could be very, very cold, you know.
Sure, yeah.
And the idea of that was to get the spring run of salmon. You get the big salmon in there, and it would be into May a good bit before you would see the grills, you know, the smaller fish appearing. But we had some very good fishings. But the trouble was, the first year I was there, we had no bothies, so we had to stay up in Mingary House.
Oh, right, okay.
The house, there was one room that hadn't been sort of knocked out, so we used to stay in there. But you had to carry the fish from the shore to Mingary House on a hand barrow.
Oh, jinx.
It was some weight.
Aye.
No, I always blamed that for me never growing very tall.
Weighing you down. Yeah.
But we used to have to do that every day. And then the second winter, you know, the first winter after we were finished, we managed to improve. There was a track down there, but we improved it, and then you could get the van down to the top of the hill,
make a difference.
where you go down. Aye, you know, but you still had to carry the salmon up there. But it was hard going, you know. So I think it was the second year we had a big fishing. But one day when we were reckoning, we never counted them, but we had about 48 boxes of salmon.
Goodness me.
We were reckoning there must be upwards of 400 fish.
That's incredible.
No, it was I never seen a fishing like that in my life.
Considering the scarcity that goes up the river nowadays.
Oh, I bet these were different times.
Aye.
But we went out and we fished that Moorachan height first of all, and by Jove, there was some dose of fish in it, and she was only 16 foot, and it was getting a bit dangerous, so we had to come in, we dumped that fish up in the green, covered them up, went down to the Glengoram net, and there was even more in it. Oh, we were getting a bit worried about whether we would make it back, but we did. And we put that ashore, then we went back to the Castle net, which was further east. And there wasn't as much in that one, but maybe as much as there had been in the Moorachnach. So took that back, got it back to the green where the bothy was. Then how do we get it from there to Dervig was the problem. So we decided I would go to Mingery, Peter would start boxing the fish, and I would go to Mingery. He'd go to Queenish, see if I could borrow the tractor and trailer. So I went up there, and Uncle Hughie was there, so I got the tractor. Yeah. Drove to Dervig, collected all the boxes I could find, because we always had a store. Yeah. So back to Mingery, we finished boxing the fish and got them on the trailer, and there was some load in it. Took it to Dervig. Well, I don't know, we were reckoning there would be between 2 and 2.5 ton of fish in that thing. It was some heap of stuff. Got it to Dervig, and Donny Mackay had a wee lorry at that time, so we took it in a year to the pier, go in the Lohanvar, and then away to Oban, onto the train, and it would be down in Glasgow in the afternoon. That was in the market there.
Gosh.
But it was some experience.
I'm sure.
Nah, but I mean, it was nothing to get 100 fish in a day. Nothing at all. It'd be a lot more than that some days. Yeah. But that was the biggest day I ever seen,
It was quite considerable.
So the next year, well, at the end of that year, Peter ordered a new coble from Weatherhead in Cockenzie in Fife. And we got that the following spring. She was 24 feet, one inboard, Peter's engine. It was great, what a difference.
Did that allow you to go further out as well?
No, we didn't go anywhere out. You were fixed to the area you had, and these nets were set nets. There was anchors, and you just changed the net once a week.
Okay.
Put a new head and a new...
and was it done by licensing? Were you licensed?
Oh, yes. Well, the Moorachnach one was owned by the Queenish estate.
Yes.
And they could, with their permission, you could fish as long as you wanted. But the other one, it was a crown fishing.
Right.
Now, that crown fishing only lasted for 9 years. You only got a lease for 9 years. Okay. And then you had to bid again.
Right, okay. So someone else could bid in on you?
Oh, absolutely, and it happened all the time.
Over you, yeah.
Yeah, they could. But it was quite amazing, the fish it was about these. But then it didn't matter where you went. If you were at the mouth of the Aras Burn up there, any day at the show field, and the tide was in, it would just fish everywhere.
Yes.
It's the same in Loch Cuan, Loch Mingery, that place you're living there. Used to net that place, but there was one place in that Narrows that was good. It's called the Pot.
Oh, I know the geography, but I don't know the name.
It's
where's
the
the
Pot? It's about halfway up, and there's a kind of a point comes out, and there's a deep hole in there, a deep pool. Fish used to come up, and they would lie in that before the actual tide started running back into the loch, That was the Pot.
Good for otters down there.
Oh, aye.
We see otters there a lot. Yeah. And
we used to trap the otters at one time.
Did you?
Father.
Belt or?
Oh, yes. Aye, my father was always at that, At Dervig, there above the bridge, we always had traps in there in the winter time. And used to skin the otters, and the old door, it was in the smithy, between the smithy and the shed at the back. It was just, you would nail them on there, the whole stretch them out, Well, in these days, it was a great sense of source of money.
Yeah, of course.
Because if you got a really good skin, you would get £4 or £5 for it. Now, a man's wage in these days was maybe not a lot more than that, so it was valuable, if you got
And where would they be sent to? Would they be sent to...
Oh, we used to send them to a firm down in England.
Right.
Yeah, they used to buy them. They're very, very keen on these things. But they had to be good. If they were short or that, you wouldn't get nearly so much. But, so you trapped them, and you got the good ones.
It's like mink as well. Georgia, my wife, had caught mink. We trap mink. We have traps for mink so that they didn't take the chicken. Unfortunately, all of our chickens have been taken by otters.
Oh, I know the otters.
Same as Catherine's, aye. Oh, it's blooming annoying. But we used to have it with the mink, and Georgia thought, well, it's a terrible waste of life, just trapping these. So she started to skin them and got some skins, and was noticing the pattern was very different. Like there's only a very specific window where you get a decent pelt out of them.
The only time of year you should ever take any pelt is in the winter.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether it's a mole or a rabbit or anything else. The winter's the time, because the coat's set at that time of year. Right. And the hairs don't come out of it. But I'll tell you the story about Alec Ban. He was always shooting things too, and he was never very particular about what kind of shot he used. He used to get cartridges, and he would take the lead out of them, if it was a number 6 or something, it was too light. And he would get a big sheet of lead, and he'd be cutting chunks off it,
Oh, yeah.
Stemming her up.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And then they would put candle grease in the end of the cartridge.
Wow.
And that held it together.
Right, okay, binding it, yeah.
So he appeared in the smithy one day with this big otter, big dog otter, and the old man was delighted, He thought, oh, this is great. So we were out in the smithy, him and I, skinning it, and when he came to the back, it was just nothing but holes, square holes. This was the lead, Alec Ban.
Goodness sake, yeah.
So it was
Oh my.
Aye, but there was.
It's not a nice end.
He put ball bearings in another one.
For God's sake, that would rip things apart.
He got out of a bicycle wheel somewhere, and then he poured the candle grease in it, and it let rip, and it came out. The barrel was square at the end.
So what was Alec Ban's cottage like when it was lived in? Because I've always looked at it from a distance and thought how beautiful it is.
Oh, it was very nice over there. Aye, yeah. He was married, Alec, and he had one son, and they lived there. Nellie, his wife, she was diabetic, and she died, fairly young. It was a shame, but Alec used to walk up, and they walked up and down. Him and his brother John stayed there with him, and when they were at the fishing. These McDougals, it's a sad state of affair. Now, there was my great-grandfather, call him Alasdair, they called him, and his brother Charlie. Now, they each had, one had 11, I think the other one had 12, but there was one of them died, so they both ended up with 11 of a family. And of these two families, there is not one male today living. They've all, a lot of these men didn't ever get married either. It was a shame.
So you started off fishing with salmon netting.
Salmon netting.
And what did you move on to from that?
Well, Robin Coe, Michelle's father.
Yes.
His father Alec had the arms, and Robin was always keen on fishing too, So he got a boat from one of the Malay boats. It was Speedwell, it was called. Mm-hmm. She wasn't very big, about 30 odd feet, maybe 35 feet or something. Mm-hmm. So Robin was fishing with that for maybe a year, and then he got the Valiant, another one. She was built by Charlie Henderson up there in Malay too, and she was Carvel built. She was a wee bit bigger, and he wanted me to go with him, because I'd done a good bit at the creels with the other crowd, and
right, okay.
I could make creels and put eyes in them and all this carry on.
That's a great thing. Yeah.
So I did that, and I went with Robin. I was 2 or 3 years with Robin, and he had that, and then he got another Malay boat from Malay down, and the Speedwell too. Mm-hmm. He had that one as well. So I spent a while with Robin at that sort of thing, because it was difficult getting a cruise at any experience, in these days, because there wasn't, for years, I think during the war years, and pre-war there was always fishing went on, but I think after the war, during the war, a lot of the guys went away and maybe never came back. So when I went with him, the thing about it at that time, there was a big fleet of Malay boats, maybe 7 of them used to come round about. But there was always laws, like being local people, we used to fish right round Mull and Tracy's Islands, and out the Col and places like that. But Arnamurra too, that was another place. But you would always find lobsters, if you had any kind of signs. So I worked with Rob, and then I went back. Peter wanted me to go back with him, so I went back with Peter, and eventually, I think it was 1964, I had managed to save up as much money by that time as would buy my boat, because you couldn't get money from anybody.
No. Not even the bank?
No, they wouldn't give you $1. You had no collateral, that was the problem. No. So just before I got that boat, maybe a year before that, there was a Highland Fund, they called it at the time, and Mary Morrison, Ian's mother, she was very friendly. They were always very friendly with our family, so she said to me one time, how about trying this Highland Fund to see if there's money, So she got in touch with them, and we had a meeting with them up in the Western Isles there, where they listened to the whole story, and they turned around and said to me, well, you're from Mull? Yes, I said, born and bred. Well, had you come from somewhere else, you would have got money. We are trying to encourage people to come to the island.
God.
That was what they said to us. Now, I remember
horrible.
Mary was spitting fire. She was just raging about it. But that's what they said to me. If I had come from somewhere else, or come maybe from the south or somewhere, I don't know, not $1 would I get. Well, we're furious, all right. So it meant then you had to save up, and do what you could. I used to do a bit in the winter sometimes when the salmon fishing stopped at the rabbits. I had Colachron and Glenaris and Cranach, and made a lot of money at that.
Really?
Oh, aye. That was a great thing.
The meat and pelts. The meat and the pelts.
Oh, you sold the rabbits just as they were. You gutted them and paired them up, put them in a bag and sent them off to Glasgow. Okay. But I had 25, 30 dozen snares, and you put them out on a Monday, shifted half of them on the Tuesday, and went on that up to the end of the week. Now, we were getting at that time, it was a good price for rabbits, £10 a bag, which consisted of about 24 or 25 pair of rabbits, 50 rabbits altogether. Now, if you could even get a bag, and sometimes you get 2 bags for a day if you were lucky.
Goodness me.
You would get £10 a bag. Now that was a fortune, because it was more than a man's wage.
You're saying £8 every That's a lot.
So with that and all the other, when I was working at a salmon, I would only be just taking what I would be giving my mother at home, and we left the rest, and I got it in a lump sum. So I saved all that money, and at the end of the day, it was up near £2,000 I had, which was a lot of money.
That's impressive. Yeah.
And that was how I managed to buy that first boat. I bought her. She was called the Manx Beauty. She was built in, it must have been about 1934 or something like that. And she was requisitioned by the Navy during the war, and there was a big gun in her forward, So she was
what size was she?
48 feet.
Okay.
So I got that. It was in November, what would that be, 64, I think it was. And we took her home here. It was Christmas Eve. Went down to Camel. Now, it was in Portavogie I bought her, but there was some of the Irish boats were working in the Clyde, so Donnan got a couple of the boys to take her to Camel. So went down and picked her up. Alasdair MacLean, my cousin, Ploch, they call him. He was with me at that time, and then John Wiltshire came with me. So we had a good crew, but it was tough going at the start. But I had made my own creels, every one of them, before that. But we only had about 200. That's all we worked in these days, You would work what you could carry.
Yes.
That was it. But we got that boat then, took her home, and we did a bit of trawling with her later on. in 1971, as I was saying, I ordered that new Aquila, from Knowles. That was it. But but we used to fish all over with them, But all the boats were the same in these days. You didn't fish one area, you kept moving around.
Right, so there was no specific territory that was yours?
No,
right.
No, you just went. I mean, we fished a lot in the Torrens and down to Isla and, all over the Cole and...
A heck of a rough in the Torren Rocks.
It was all right. You got used to it. But there was...
That's when I've been down there, it's like, oh, no.
We used to stay in the Tinker's Hole there, Yeah. Before you come into the Tinker's Hole, there's a narrow gap there. And they used to call that, the Mallock men called it the Dardanelles, And we used to anchor there and just worked there all week. We stayed there all week, came home on a Friday, Nobody worked the weekends in these days. That was very much frowned upon.
So, talking of weekends, how did you come to meet your wife, and how did you come to settle? And
well, she was... I don't know, probably a dance or something, I would imagine. I would think so, because it was different these days. Dances were great social occasions, People, I was talking about that not long ago, the Games Week.
Yes.
There would be a dance every night of the week somewhere.
Fantastic.
There would... Terloisk and Salem and Moornish and different places, and... You went to every one of them. By the end of the week, you were just completely shattered. So,
which was the best hall?
It wasn't so much the hall you were worried about. It was just the dance. The crack was good,
Because I've heard tale of being the Athletic Hall being fantastic out over at Thomas.
Oh, don't talk about that one. That was a Nissen hut. That's what that was.
Right.
And they were dancing a Highland Scottish in there, and you would see the walls going in and out.
Oh, fantastic.
But there was a good one there too. They used to have Cayleys,
Yes, yeah.
Oh, it was a great thing to go to the Cayleys. So there was a man, Donald MacLean, Dollalan they called him over there. He would be Christine MacPhail's grandfather, I would think.
Okay.
But anyway... He used to play the pipes, and there was a raised stage on it, and the rafters were low on the thing, and he would start marching across here like this to the other end, and then he would start turning around, and the drones would whack off the thing, the squealing that used to go on. Oh, it was a great place. They had electric light, believe it or not. They had a turbine, I think. The big dam was outside the hall yonder, and that was the start of it, But maybe depending on how much water there was, they would start running out. Tilly lamps would have to come out then and get in.
Yeah,
it was a great place, Terloisk. Terloisk was one of the favourites, I think.
And who would provide the tunes at the time? When the people, obviously Bobby MacLeod was around, but who were the key? Who would you, if someone was playing?
Bobby MacLeod was the elite, really. That you didn't. The like of Johnny Farkas, and it was in Dervig. Colin Morrison, Ian's father. Johnny Simpson on the fiddle, and Kaya Farkas, and she used to play the piano. Oh, the music in these days was totally different because it was all people that learned music by ear, or learned to play by ear, and it was a natural rhythm they had.
Yeah.
It wasn't this thing you've got today where every note's got to be perfect. It was a rhythm that counted. You can dance to their music, to the old, the music the old ones had. But 90% of the ones that's there today, I don't know what you would be doing. It's on jumping up and down and waving your arms kind of thing. Well, it was all set dances and waltzes and things like that we had. But the dances were fantastic. They really were, Oh, it was good. Great stuff altogether. But I don't know. It's a shame the way that's all gone, really.
It's slowly coming back. I mean, we have tunes in the house, and we have tunes with friends and things quite regularly. But in fact, the Bella Croy are doing good things these days. They've had Hector McFadden across just this weekend, and you rarely find a better box player. He's just
He's like what Fergie MacDonald was, and a lot of these boys when they started off. They were natural. It was the natural sound they were producing. But nowadays, it's very artificial. A lot of that music, it's not the same sort of thing.
Have you come across Gordon Duncan at all, the piper? He's no longer with us, but he wrote some fantastic tunes.
I've heard his tunes.
The famous Baravan and things like that. There's something about his music that really just is
I'll tell you what
alive.
I'll tell you what they used to say, the old folks, that there's no lift in his music.
Ooh. No, that's interesting.
Well, that was the old saying, there was no lift in his music, and that was because it was flat. See, the lift was because that was the proper rhythm for dancing, you could, These people, they played the music the way they sang the song.
Yes, yeah.
That was the lilt that was in it.
Yeah, totally.
You
went with that with the body.
Yeah. But Ian's father, Colin, God knows how many dances he was playing at, and they were all, it was great.
Was he on the box?
Yes, aye. But, the old button box. And there was another fellow, Johnny Russell, he used to play as well. He was from Salon. There was various ones, and there used to be a man, Connolly. He used to come too, and I think he was a woodcutter originally. I think he'd probably been working here, I can't remember, but I remember he used to have a white shirt on, and I always remember him in Mornish one night, and it was in the summertime, and it was warm, hot, and the man was just drenched in sweat.
Well, that would be me, I must admit, of local players, one of my favourites is Anne MacDonald, Johnny Simpson's granddaughter.
Yes,
Anne is just got the most beautiful tone of the fiddle, and it's part of her.
But you get that from her father types of music. I mean, they weren't note perfect by any manner of means, any of these people, but their music had the lift. That was the difference. It was good music to dance to, compared with today's music. The music is probably not perfect, but it's a different thing.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, different altogether. These were a bit. I think that's where all the winching went on in these days, was at the dance.
Yeah,
that started.
That's a good term.
Aye.
If it's okay to go back to the fishing, so you've gone lobsters and trawling for salmon, and
we're at the lobsters and the trawl as well. And then when we got the Aquila, it was when I built the boat, it was ring nets, at that time. By the time the boat was built, they had gone over for herring. It was trawling mainly, So I didn't get a ring net. I changed it for trawls.
It's at this point that Alasdair brings in some photos, and over the next couple of moments we talk through the photos and look at them. The photo of the Aquila was taken by Bill Clegg as well, who'd been a local doctor here and very much missed character. He was a really fine gentleman. And you can find the photos we talk about in Alasdair's webpage for the podcast on www.whatwedointhewinter.com. Okay, back to the podcast.
Bill Clegg took that photo from just above the lighthouse there. We're coming into Tobermory.
Beautiful.
And there's that was taking fish aboard in Loch Nakiel, that's Ailsa beside you there.
Goodness me.
That was a bag full of sprats.
Gosh. Oh, and that was for going out to the Klondikers?
Aye, well, we did that too, but we would be steaming.
Who have you got in the photo here? Who are all the boys?
That was myself.
Mm-hmm.
With Napoleon there.
I was just going to say, yeah, you've been drinking brandy with that, yeah.
Well, that's what old Pittman used to call me.
Napoleon.
Aye, I used to drink brandy. That was Charlie MacDonald.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was Colin. That's Alan Mackenzie.
Mm-hmm.
That's Wee Eck.
Oh, gosh.
That was my brother Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
That was Marky, the famous Marky Dan.
Oh, yes, yeah.
No, one of them must be John Wiltshire, and probably Neil MacLean, the other one.
So you've got about 9-10 guys there on.
Aye, but that was the crew of both boats.
Ah, right, okay.
See, when you were pair trawling...
Oh, you pair trawled, right.
See, that must have been the first year we had the boat. There was no power block.
Right.
We got a power block the next year.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first year we had it. But that was it. So you lifted it aboard with this and dropped it. There was pond boards on the deck and holes and chutes, and you shot them into the lockers down the hole, you know. That's the Manx Beauty there.
Oh, she's lovely. Gosh, she must have powered through the waves.
She was a beautiful... Well, she's still going.
Is she? Where is she now?
Still in England, she is.
Mm-hmm.
I sold her to Pad still.
Mm-hmm.
But that was her CN 233.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the Marina.
Mm-hmm.
That was one that Cameron
Mm-hmm.
Winker father had.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the Beulah Robin Cow had.
Mm.
That was what that...
What do you think is it that makes Loch Naquil and all that the place to be for prawns? What is it about that?
There's a lot to do with the water too, and what... You know, you get... there's a lot of burns come into these lochs. And for some reason, I don't know, everything seems to thrive. It's not pure salt water, you know, it is mostly, but there's always that sort of thing in it. Mm. Did you ever hear of Pluto?
Yeah, I've heard the name Pluto. I don't...
There's the famous Pluto.
Right.
That was him again.
What was Pluto known for? I've heard the name of it, certainly.
Pluto was a marvellous crater. He was in the war.
Mm-hmm.
He signed up. I think he was only, maybe, I don't know if he was even 17, and he was in the Navy. He travelled all over the world. That man, he would turn up anywhere. He would sleep on a doorstep if he had to. You know, they were one of the McAllisters. You know,
the traveller folk.
Aye,
yeah.
But he was some boy. He would survive anything. He did too. Mm-hmm.
What was your favourite thing to fish? What was the most rewarding in terms of personally?
The lobsters, I think. I would stay at the lobsters. That was Aquila when she was new, brand new, just appearing at the pier there.
And what was it about fishing lobsters that was so rewarding? Was it just the gamble of it?
It's like any job, you know. If you're doing something, you get you're interested in, you get better at it, you know. Yeah. The fishing, you know, it didn't matter any aspect of fishing. I liked the pier trawling for the herring and the sprats too, you know. It was it's a bit of a challenge, all that. You know, you've got to remember when you leave here on a Monday morning that you've got to make wages for 5 men.
Yes.
And that's the big difference. Yeah. And I mean, you get seamen, people that, you know, work on ferries or cargo ships or any of these things. They're getting paid whatever they're doing. But if you're a fisherman, you've got to go out there and get it. And if you don't get paid. That's just the basic thing. But
how was it with the dynamic of of the men in the boat together? How was that? Were there any particular crews that you remember with great fondness as one?
All these boys that were there at that time. That Marky Dan, that Mark McAllister, he was just something else. You know, that man, the wit that man had, you just wouldn't believe. You know, they were all like that, these people.
Are there any stories particularly associated with Marky Dan? I mean, I've heard one or two, but that stand out from the test of time.
There's endless amounts of stories that Marky had. Well, one of the ones I remember a lot, his uncle and his grandfather were in Benason, and he was working with us at the time. And we were at the pier trawl at the time at the Sprats. And we were going to go into Benason. You see, I think Ian had gone to land. We had just got enough to fill one boat. So we went into Benason. He says, I'll need to go up and see my grandfather. He's dying. Oh, yes, and I didn't know that, Mark. I said, he's not well at all. Well, I said, look, we're going out at 4 o'clock, and you better go up there, and if you're going up there, you better be back for 4, because that'll be it. If you don't turn up, we're off. So anyway, 4 o'clock came, no sign of Marky Dan. So I sent John Wiltshire and Neil up to look for him. But anyway, they eventually got him. But it was, by this time it would be after 5 o'clock, So anyway, and I was in the wheelhouse and I seen him coming down the pier and he just jumped onto the boat and down the forecastle like a shot out of sight, you see. So anyway, we went round. It was a night with a moon. There wasn't much doing. So anyway, it must have been a Friday night. So we decided to come home. So we came home here, and it was through the middle of the night, and the Loch Buoy, Loch Nail, it was tied up on the mooring. So we didn't go to the pier. We just tied up on each side of this boat, and it's on one side and we were on the other. And Marky Dan popped his head up, and he must have been feeling really rough, I said to him, "Where were you when we were supposed to be leaving at 4 o'clock?" Well, he started giving me cheek then. "You can bugger off," he says. "I'm not coming back in your boat, I'm off." Jumped on the Loch Nail rather. Went to the other side, no pier.
Oh, gee.
He thought we were tied up at the pier. So he was peeking round the wheels at me for a while, He had to wait. He had to wait. But there's hundreds of stories if I could remember them all.
One of the ones I heard, which it was about trawling off of Coll and catching the cable. Ian mentioned that.
He was on the Village Bell then, and it was for Paul Gallagher. And somebody says to him, and they're talking about boats, you see, "That's no much of a boat you've got there, Marky Dan, no much power in that thing." "Power," he said. "Caught the cable going to Coll, and we're pulling the cookers out of the gable ends of the houses in Tyrese." That was Marky Dan. But he was a real character, There's a lot of good stories about him down at Benes and his uncle Peter John and that. Peter John and Campbell had a mini, not a mini, but it might have been a mini. It was a small car anyway. When the rally started, and I was getting it ready, as everybody did in these days, they just did the thing themselves, and. It must have been up in the pub or something, and they were asking Andy how the car was going, and Andy said it was fine, but we need to get somebody to tune the engine. And Peter John pipes up, "I would tune it for you, Andy," he says, "but I'll be responsible for no deaths." In other words, it was going to go that quick.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
There was some team.
And in the village, when you were growing up in Dervig, who were the characters then? Who stood out from there?
There was a lot of old people in Dervig in these days because after the war, even during the war, most of the guys were away, and there was a lot. There was Lord knows how many. There was the Johnsons. They were more of the travelling people. They were related to Marky Dan too, and they were up in Temple Cottage, just at the top of the street there. Yeah. And we used to spend a lot of time up there with them. They were great characters, They always had whippets, fast dogs, and they would be away poaching a rabbit here and there. And they used to wear on army greatcoats. They would hang them on the rabbit belt, you would see. There was like Johnny Farquharson and.
Who was the Bongan? I've heard of him. The Bongan refers
the Bongan was something else. He was a different character. There was him. There was Hugh McNeill. Hugh McNeill was the postman. He was from Mulva Ferry. And there was the Bongan, and there was Mr. Alasdair MacLean. Now, he was in Dramard. His sister was married to Roderick MacLean that used to have Gomatra.
Oh, right, yes, yeah.
And then they had Trachlahan.
Yeah.
And they ended up, I don't know was it when Roderick died, but they were up in Dramard at that time. And they used to sit in the cowser, as they called it, out. The post office then was where the McDonald's were, it's in the middle. It was opposite Craigan, where I was born. Right, yeah. And they were sitting there waiting for the meal to come in, maybe at 6 o'clock, probably by that time. And they would be starting telling two stories, and oh dear me, you've never heard stories in your whole life like it. They were on about bulls one night, and Oh, it must have been Mr. Alasdair. I said, "You've got no bulls in Mull that's half as big as the bulls we had out in Uist." He was from Uist, you see. Huge, they said, the bulls that we've got out there. And Hugh McNeil poked up. Oh, he said, we had a bull in Alva there. He said he was massive. He was really big. He was huge. You couldn't keep him in a field or fence or anything. He was just going through the lot. And, of course, the bung got smoking away at the pipe yonder, and somebody says to him, "Do you ever any big bulls, Neil?" He was at the farming too, you know, he worked on farming. Oh, well, he said, "Yes, we had a bull down in the Ross when I was working down there," he said. "And was he big, Neil?" "Oh, yeah, he was big," he said. "We couldn't get him into the byre in the winter." "Oh, yeah, it must have been. What did you do with him?" "Ah, well, we just thatched him outside," he said. Oh, he had some good stories. Nearly, his son, he worked in the forestry, nearly. He used to run the mill too. He had the mill master there. And when he was in the forestry, he was a gamekeeper there, I think, latterly. You know. They used to be sitting they had a dormobile at that time, you know, each of the teams, and they would be sitting in there half the day if it was raining or anything. And
Yes.
they were doing I Spy with my little eye, you see. So they were all having a shot at it. They came to the Bungans down, and Neely says, what you saying, Neely? What do you see? "Oh, I see SF," he said. Oh, yes. Anyway, they're all going through everything they could see in the whole van. No, not one of them could make head nor tail of it. So that went on till they were going home at night. Now they said, "Look, Neil, you need to tell us what this SF." "Sermus Flask," he says.
That's brilliant.
Sermus Flask. He used to have another one too. They were talking about the roads, you know, in Mull.
Yes.
And talking about the Greenman Rocks. Oh, he said, a relation of mine that was working on that. He said it made that road, actually. Oh, and who was he? He was my father's sister's brother, he said, his uncle. Some confusion up there. Oh, there was endless amounts of stories of these people. But when that mail was coming in at that time of night, and everybody would be gathered at that cow's house yonder, and they'd be sitting there, and that was the talk that was going on, you know, great stories altogether. Oh, it's a pity folk didn't have tape recorders in these days to record some of it, you know. They were brilliant. That Mr. Alasdair had some good stories too. He used to put his hand on top of your head. "Now I'll tell you what you had for your breakfast, boy," he would say. And say, "Well, what was it?" "Porridge." No, it would be porridge anyway. Because
That's what you had. Yeah.
There was something else, these people. But there's endless amounts of stories. I need to sit down and remember some of them right enough. But no, Derwig was a great place in these days. But there was a lot of MacLeans in Derwig. You know, really and truly, I mean, there wasn't very many other names there. You know, it was nearly all MacLean. And the surrounding area, there was Farquharsons and, you know, one or two like that. But no, it was mostly MacLean. It's amazing how fast that these people, you know, the whole lot of these families have disappeared, you know. I think in Derwig today, well, there's Archie in MacLean up at Harperfield there. There's
Neil.
Woolley and Neil and the Smitty. Old Catherine down there now. And I don't think there's many more than that there that I can think of that was there when we were young, you know. It was a great place to Derwig in these days. See, there was no electricity, no running water, nothing. It was just totally different, you know. We used to go caily into the houses, you know, granduncles and grandaunties. They were up there, the cottages that were there where Willie Macron stays today, you know. Yep. Johnny Gowan, that was my granduncle's name, and his sister, and his niece was staying there, you know, and his brother Charlie too. Chelach like a dram, you know, and
Yeah.
he'd be in the Balchroyd and he'd come over. Oh, there was very little drink, but, you know, I think, you know, during the war there was that, the rationing, you know, you can't think of that, but rationing started in 1940. Now, I was born in 1939. Now, from 1940 to 1954, when I left the school, that's the year the rationing stopped. Now, you couldn't get clothing, you couldn't get
Sugar
anything.
things, fruits,
Anything, sweeties. We used to get half a dozen wee caramels with paper, and that was for a Saturday or a Sunday morning. You used to get it, you know. Oh, aye. But it was just a different world, really. But and you used to go up the street at night and you'd smell the peat smoke, you know, from the fires, right? See, when we were at the Herring, and he used to be up the Lochs and Lewis and Harris there and down the Uis, and he'd go in there on a frosty, calm night, you know, and the smoke from these houses would be drifting out over the loch, you know. Oh man, that was something else, that. You know, if it was a bit of a moon, it was just beautiful, you know.
Magical. Yeah.
It was nice, that sort of thing. Aye.
Thank you again for talking to me, Alasdair. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you also to Anne for your hospitality, and also to Kathleen, Alasdair and Anne's daughter, for getting things rolling. Alasdair passed me a text from his family that came from a transcript of an interview with the School of Scottish Studies, and I'd like to read it to you now, as I mentioned in the podcast. So this is from the School of Scottish Studies, and it's from Alec Breck, at the age of 85, from Treshnish in Mull, recorded by Alan Bruford on the 6th of July 1967. Mr. MacDougall estimated that his ancestors first came to Mull about 200 years before. The first paragraph therefore probably refers to the end of the 18th century, the second to the beginning of the 19th. My great-grandfather and his two brothers, it was from Ireland that they first came here, up to Laganulva, and they made whisky there. They had a good lot of whisky, and they couldn't get it sold at all here. They had to go to Ireland. They left Lagan yonder at nightfall, and they went out through the Sound of Iona until they were out of sight from everywhere before day broke. Then they got to Belfast. They sold the whisky. They got $1 a bottle for it. Then they would get flour and stuff like that too. Anyway, they were back in Laganulva on the morning of the third day, 3 of them, with a rowing boat. Then they came to Treshnish, and the sons started making whisky. My grandfather and his brother. They were working at it for a long while, and they couldn't get it sold. There was a man in Call, he was buying it, whatever way he managed to get it away to Ireland. They had a lot of whisky this day, and information had been laid that they had it, but they picked a wild day to go to Call with it, because that way there was less likely to be a boat or anything around to see them. What should have happened, but when they were halfway out to Call, she came in sight round Kayach Point. The revenue cutter was after them. They fired a shot from the cutter to see if she would stop. They couldn't turn back, the sea was so rough, so what they did was let her run for Tiree to get clear of the trouble. They got to Tiree, they ran around to a gyaw there, and the Tiree people came down to them, masses of them. They realised at once what was happening. They picked up the whisky and went off with it and hid it somewhere. Then another squad came and lifted the boat out of the water and put it up behind the other boats. The cutter arrived anyway and sent a boat ashore. They ransacked the whole place, but they didn't find the whisky. They found the boat, still wet, up behind the other boats. They took the boat with them to Campbellton anyway. But I don't believe they ever laid hands on the whisky. So there you go, that's quite something. I'd just like to mention our sponsor again for this episode, who are www.mullselfcatering.co.uk. The view from Thornley Bank is the quintessential view over Tobermory and onto Calf, looking out to Drimnin and beyond. And you could spend just hours staring out the window there. As these podcasts take quite a lot of time to make, I'm also looking to fundraise through donations. So, if you feel like it and are able to, please feel free to donate the cost of a cup of coffee or even a sausage roll, wherever you may be, through the website. You'll see a Donate tab there, where you can donate if you so wished. But don't worry if you can't or don't want to. I'd much rather you listened than didn't. And on that note, thank you very much to Wendy for your donation. I greatly appreciate it. Many thanks. As ever, the webpage, www.whatwedointhewinter.com, has all the links and info you'll need for this episode. And we can be found on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. although I'm not really sure what I'm doing with Instagram yet. Please excuse me if my presence there is a bit vague. Thank you again for listening. I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Mornintang, Shinu! And as a wee treat for staying all the way to the end of the podcast, here's the sound of one of the deer rutting behind our house last week.